Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking. And tonight, folks, we are giving our first impressions on a cultural event that honestly should probably be a bigger cultural event than it actually is. Like, I'm sensing it's not that I'm not sensing excitement for this, but I'm sensing like very mellowed down excitement for this. We're talking about Justice League and our first impressions. Yeah. Oh man, Dragon. So it's really interesting. Like, what a roller coaster we have been on with these DC movies. Man of Steel started things off, and that's a very divisive movie. It has some good qualities to it, but I think all around it's not a great film. Although it definitely has its defenders. Batman versus Superman is kind of a hot mess. Suicide Squad is even more of a hot mess. Wonder Woman is definitely the best of the bunch, although myself, I thought Wonder Woman was, it was the best of the bunch. I still didn't think it was great. And then we get to Justice League, Dragon. Then we get to Justice League. So just jumping right into my expectations, Dragon, my expectations for this movie were about as far in the gutter as you could possibly go. I mean, I'm serious. This was just like I almost had lower expectations walking into this than I did walking into Batman versus Superman. Like, it was that bad. Like, I was like, this was like it's kind of like the inevitability of blockbuster cinema. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to see it to keep up with the conversation, but your heart's not really in it. And Dragon, I gotta say, in the first act, I was ready to write this movie off. I was not into it. I was like, all right, there's some decent set pieces here and there, but it's going really slow. It's not really coming together. Dragon, by the third act, I gotta say, this really came around for me. I was hooked on this thing. It's really kind of odd, It's like, this definitely feels like a Joss Whedon product through and through. It is definitely, its strength lies in the team of it all, you know what I mean, of the team dynamic. And it's got a lot of humor in it. I've heard mixed criticisms about the humor. I've heard some people like the humor. Some people think it's too much. Dragon, my take on the humor in this is simple. Not all the jokes land. However, having said that, honestly, I think in this movie, there's fewer groaners than there were in Thor Ragnarok. I'm not saying this is a better movie than Thor Ragnarok. I'm just saying, I thought the sense of humor for this movie was, it wasn't perfect, but for me, it was pretty on point. It was definitely a tonal shift from what we've gotten before with DC. But you know what, Dragon? It was good to see these characters crack a smile every once in a while. I mean, I really did. I think there's strengths and weaknesses with this film. It's not a perfect film. I mean, I'm not gloating about it. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, I think Wonder Woman is, honestly, it's like, I probably enjoyed this a little bit better than Wonder Woman, but this is like purely popcorn entertainment in the highest form, whereas Wonder Woman actually has something to say. So Wonder Woman is probably overall the better movie. But I thought this was like the easier sit. I thought this went by faster. And honestly, Dragon, this is, honest to God, the first DC movie that I'm actually looking forward to watching again. So, yeah, it's not a perfect movie by any stretch. I give it a solid 7 out of 10. But it's a step forward. I really think this is a step forward. And, if a 7 out of 10 is as good as we're going to do with this, then, well, at least it's a fun movie. So, all right, Dragon, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
Let's see. So my expectations going in, of course, I have a history of the Justice League. Of course, I've watched it. I've always been invested. The DCAU has always been my bread and butter in terms of what kind of got me into heroes in comics. I've always got like a good baseline of what what feels like the Justice League, and of course, that series is so faithful and relevant to what the DC universe is, and basically it gives you a good baseline just on those characters, period. And that basically is like kind of the jumping off point if you were to read any adventures of those characters in the comics and get to know them further. Of course, like you like Flash in that show. Eventually, it'll get you into the Flash TV show years later. So it's that sort of line you can track all these with. So I know a little something about the Justice League. So interestingly, going into this movie, aside from I want to say I'd seen. Remember that I saw the Comic-Con trailer. Basically, I went into this knowing as little about the movie as I could, barring those two main trailers. You know, of course, the big Comic-Con trailer, I think, was where I stopped watching trailers from that point forward. So I was at a good point going into the movie blind. I mean, I just knew like kind of the basic synopsis of, okay, we got three mother boxes, and basically it's a hunt for three mother boxes. I knew that's the extent of what I knew going into the movie. I could figure that based on I know what a mother box is, so I kind of if you read the comics, you know what a mother box is. You know, it's basically it's essentially it's a more convoluted tesseract essentially.
Right.
And that's, I mean, that's kind of what they've become. Mother boxes used to be a lot more simple, but the comics have kind of complicated them, so now they're a little complicated. I mean, just points. I went in the movie knowing a little what was going to be, going to be in the movie, like how things were going to transpire, that sort of stuff. And of course, I think we all knew going into the movie, kind of the big production shake-up, kind of the Whedon of it all, just the boil down. Basically, knowing that we would have a shift in. Basically, we don't know how much it was Snyder, how much is Whedon. So basically, with that announcement, they kind of instilled more hope in the production. Like, okay, hey, Whedon had some say in this, and they worked in the post-production. They reshooting some stuff. Again, I kind of instilled a little bit more hope than I was kind of going into it. Like, oh man, it was more like kind of dire hope of like, oh god, I hope please be better.
Kind of like my feeling walking into Jurassic World.
Yes, and basically the Whedon of all kind of put me at a really good level. Where again, I just came into it completely blind, saying, "Well, you know what? I mean, I think it's got a shot. It's got a shot at the title, man." So coming out of it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. That's where
I'm right there with you.
Liked it, but I didn't love it. There were moments during it that while I was watching the movie that kind of made me raise an eyebrow, which I usually don't have. Usually I'm at kind of the most. Usually I give the first viewing I'm really positive on. Then of course over time either like things kind of occur to me or those plot holes just kind of they start to become apparent, and then you basically you kind of look back a little bit more critically. But in this case, I was noticing a few chinks in the armor as it was going on. Like, yeah, kids. Yeah, right. Yeah, I was giving it the
shot in the dark. Does one of your plot holes involve Bruce Wayne and Aquaman?
Well, it's more of like it's a vague tone thing, but I mean that was like one of those moments. Yeah, it's mainly Aquaman.
Because I definitely had a big plot hole. I don't want to say what it is, but there. Let's just say they play fast and loose with the whole secret identity thing in this movie, which was kind of bothering me. I don't know if you had that issue.
It didn't bother me too much because I mean it's just kind of casual. I mean I don't know. I don't think everyone's hearing the conversation, so I guess I gave it a pass. But then you might.
I guess, but I mean I'm hearing what you're saying about like these plot holes kind of creeping up on you, and that was happening for me just with like wait a minute, like Bruce and Aquaman are talking directly about him being Batman, and there's like a crowd of people directly behind him.
Well, the main thing for me, I guess, was let's just say was kind of Aquaman's character. Kind of like I felt, in the beginning, Aquaman's character there's a line that kind of.
I'm going to say it right now. Aquaman is the weak point of the movie, sadly.
All I'll say on Aquaman at this point is that Aquaman there's a line that Aquaman has that I think kind of like it takes the credibility that the character, the potential and the credibility the character could have had. And it kind of like with one line, it kind of makes him a little less interesting. It was really early in the movie, and that kind of stuck with me as I was experiencing Aquaman. So basically, any pass I was giving him was kind of affected by that, and that really kind of bothered me. It was like it's like a line that really does not reflect well on his character. We'll get into that when we get into spoilers, I guess. Not here, of course, but now at some point.
Well, let's get into a positive though, Dragon. How freaking good was Ezra Miller?
Ezra Miller was fantastic. And it was
Ezra Miller, I think Ezra Miller basically single-handedly saves this movie. It's like this whole movie is like on his shoulders practically. For me.
Ezra Miller was a blast, and impressively for anyone just kind of any huge Flash TV show fans. I'll put your minds at ease now. It's a very I think you've seen a little bit of the Flash. Would you agree with me that it's a very different Flash than what we've seen on?
It is very decent. Dragon, I've only seen the first season of Flash, so I haven't seen all of it. For me, this Flash was a lot more jokey than the TV show Flash. Not that the TV show Flash isn't lighthearted, but this one is like straight up more, more comedic all the way through.
It felt distinctly different than
it did. It felt very distinctly different. The only scenes that feel slightly similar that we see in the trailer, so it's not giving anything away, is the scenes with his dad in prison. That's, just because it's done so well in the show, it kind of feels like an imitation when it's done here.
Sure.
Not that those scenes aren't good. I'm just saying the show ones kind of overshadow them.
Of course, because they can build like a whole season around.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right.
It's like tomato. It's like it's kind of apple and banana in that case. Like,
whereas here, it's like, all right, one scene at the beginning, one scene at the end. All right.
So my point is, like, there are moments. I mean, just to single out the Aquaman of it all there. I'm just saying there are other moments too that kind of raise an eyebrow. Like, you know what? How do I feel about this in the movie as it's happening? Kind of like not as bad as I had with Batman v Superman. Like, Batman v Superman. Like, there's that moment in Batman v Superman.
I actually enjoyed myself in this movie.
I was saying, like, I didn't have a moment in this movie that took me.
There was no piss in the jar moment in this movie.
True, and there was no.
What? What? I cannot comprehend what is happening on screen.
And for me, there was no, Batman plowing through people, killing them in a car chase. So there was not that, because that moment was like, oh, that moment still hurts me every time I watch that movie. It's like, oh, it's like, again, I'll give like the big warehouse scene a pass to a degree, and it's like, I hate that one head slam where like the blood's on the wall. My point is just that he's driving through people. I mean, come on, he's driving through people. Like, come on, Snyder, take notes from New York, Snyder. Come on. Anyway,
notes from the other Snyder.
Come on, New York Snyder has got it down. Darn it. Anyway, so of course, now I will say this. Literally, as the credits were rolling, it was kind of dawning on me the 2 hour 45-minute. Basically, it became more apparent as I was stewing on it that I could definitely see where the 45 minutes were cut from the movie. Not as bad as like with Suicide Squad, but it was a little noticeable here and there. Like, there might seem
to me, I think it was the most noticeable in the first act.
And
the editing.
Yeah, of course, we had a few scenes from the trailer. This is a typical thing in movies. There are scenes in the trailers that usually don't make it to the movie sometimes. In this case, like, Cyborg with the full mask and stuff. Like, we know some characters were cut entirely. Willem Dafoe had a character who was cut.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there were a few characters cut. So, again, that's stuff, to get into. It kind of made me lament during the credits. Like, why can't DC ever just put a movie that doesn't need a director's cut? We haven't had that technically since Man of Steel.
Yeah, I don't know, Dragon. I feel better about the shorter runtime, like, because to me, like, a shorter runtime is better than just like dragging stuff out, even if it's for the sake of a little bit more of a clear plot.
I mean, let me make it clear to you. I mean, let me clarify again. That's why I brought up the Suicide Squad point, because it doesn't hurt the movie like Suicide Squad. I'm just saying it became a little noticeable after the movie's on. But again, I think it didn't hurt the movie being shorter. It's just it's a little noticeable. So I'm getting out there.
I'm saying, like I even thought Wonder Woman was a little overly long for what it was. So this was, like, for me, I mean, yeah, you can tell there were things that were kind of shifted around, but I mean, it's kind of hard not to notice with a movie like this. But
yeah, but again, it didn't hurt the movie any. So it was noticeable. Anyway, so of course there was some missed opportunity. I mean, just on the whole, again, just broadly, I felt there were missed opportunities. Again, I think, on the whole, what I'm really feeling about the movie, when I feel about what we do with a lot of characters, honestly, I feel we're moving in the right direction. There's some missed opportunities. Like, we're on the right track. I just wish we pushed these ideas a little further and, like, kind of make them linger. And I think the movie would have been better for.
Well, okay, let's get one thing clear. This is not a thinking man's movie. This is, like, through and through like an extra large popcorn, extra large drink, just like to me, there is, like, not an intellectual idea to be found in this movie, for better or worse.
I guess what I'm saying is, I mean, I could see where an idea could take root, but again, you're right, they didn't dwell on any of that. But I think there's potential in certain points where they could have maybe developed in the sign, maybe enriched the characters, enriched the universe a little more if they kind of lingered on just a smidge. I don't know, but I think there were points there, but again, in the end, it was more action and thought provoking.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, for me, for the most part, this had pretty decent action.
No, yeah, not. Yeah, the action was good.
I definitely think this is the best finale that we've had so far in a DC movie.
I'll give you that, and the action was good. However, Atiga, it just seems like we just can't get away from it because while again it was better, and we did make have these let's just say without giving away, we have these personal touches within the climax. We have these these personal touches, these moments.
Basically, I'll just say this: there is one moment in the climax that is like easily my favorite moment in the entire DC DC whatever cinematic universe so far. I think you might know what it is, Dragon.
I think I know what it is, but
my
point is, while we have moments like that, and we have we're more invested in our characters. Let's say, while we have we're not just it doesn't get generic in the action. It's like it basically doesn't get generic, but is our characters standing out? We're invested in our characters doing the big third act battle. However, we still have at least one scene. We still have at least in the beginning of that third act, at some point in the third act, which gets us to the big thing of it all. Again, we're still kind of doing it's a big kind of filter on it. We have a big color correction. I'm trying to describe without giving it away. Basically, we don't do the circle ring, the giant. Ring of garbage in the sky. That's kind of what people are calling it.
Oh yeah, right. We
don't do that, but we get close to that though. You can see I looks like to me Whedon he brightened it up as much as he could. That's why the colors. You know what I'm talking about. Basically,
I
do. Without giving away, let's say instead of going really dark and grim and black with kind of the color of the atmosphere within the action scenes, we go really red and. Red and bright with it. It just feels like Whedon's oh god, look at this, and we need to see our characters. Okay, guys, just brighten it up. As Mr. Whedon, we can't brighten it up. Just do it as far as you can. Just break the knob off.
All right, but let's just call a spade a spade. This movie has a weak sauce villain.
It does, but Tiki again, we don't want to get into it too much here. But let's just say you're right about that.
This villain is one step away from being Malekith.
You're right, Teague, but the one thing this guy has over Malekith, and you're absolutely right, he's weak sauce, but what I'm saying is, he's weak sauce because that's what the character is. The character is, he's a middleman, he's a weak sauce middleman, he doesn't have anything to him. So
he literally has no personality besides, I will conquer the world.
The only thing is that he's related to a big deal, that's all, that's the only... he's a he's an intermediary henchman. That's all he's ever been. So they're on the money with that. So it can't really take.
Dragon, the one thing I will say about the disposable villain though is that I honestly kind of like that the plot of this movie is so fucking simple. It's literally just okay, there's 3 cubes. The villain can't get the cubes. If the villain does get the cubes, bad shit will happen. It's that to me was honestly really refreshing. Considering the thinky headpieces that the previous 2 Snyder movies were and the incoherent mess that Suicide Squad was, I was just yes, it's an actual simple plot that I can follow like a straight line.
Now let me say this. So again, with that Tiki, I feel with that plot, just that simple plot, it did remind me of kind of again some of the animated kind of vibe from the Justice League, where basically
I was definitely getting obviously not as good, obviously not with the same caliber of writing or anything like that, but I was getting an animated vibe from this, Dragon. I definitely was.
Well, what I'm getting at is that basically the simple plot, they remind me of the first the first episode where basically it was a big basically the origin of the team. Then it's them meeting each other, and basically they kind of remind me of that sort of vibe. Where it's just simply it's an event to get them together, which essentially was what that first 3 episode arc was. And however, I will say this though, I feel my hope and just where it ended up for me is that this movie didn't feel like the Justice League movie. It just felt like a Justice League movie. Does that make any sense?
That makes perfect sense. Yeah,
it's for example, the Avengers feels like, oh my god, this is the Avengers, huge event. It doesn't.
But the Age of Ultron feels like it was an Avengers movie.
There you go, and and Justice League, of course, is predates the Avengers.
And this movie basically has the same level of quality as Age of Ultron, I would say.
I don't think you're far off with that. I think it's about right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I think Age of
Which is
Ultron
to say, it's a
word.
good movie, but it's pretty damn disposable in the long run.
I'll say that I think Age of Ultron has the
Like,
basis.
I had fun watching it, but I don't think I'm going to look back on it in 5 years and be like, oh, man.
Yeah, and but yeah, sure. And like Ultron, I think has the basis low because again we have all the other films that kind of
sure.
Exactly, but yeah, you see what I'm saying though. Again, it's like the Justice League had a similar thing like Batman v Superman in that these are two monumental events that in the history of comics that we've been dying to see brought to screen. Like these are events we waited 70+ years for, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Batman and Superman meeting each other, and of course, the formation.
This did not shit the bed nearly as much as Batman versus Superman.
You got to remember, without Justice League, we don't have Marvel without the Justice League. If you really think of it, because Justice League inspires, it basically gives us the publisher going to Stan Lee and saying, "Hey, DC's got a book where they have like a team of superheroes. Why don't you try that?"
Mm-hmm.
So again, Justice League is hugely important in the history of superheroes and the history of comics. You imagine there would be, again, Tiki, you hit it on the head in the beginning here. You imagine there'd be more hype for this, but again,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's like everyone is like, basically, Dragon, this movie comes out at a really awkward point in the blockbuster season where everyone is still like on the sugar high that was Ragnarok, and they're hyped for Star Wars. So this is literally like the Thanksgiving of blockbusters. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, Tiki, that's the perfect
analogy. I'm proud of coming up with that. That just came out of my head.
Yeah, I'm a little proud of you too, Tiki. Yeah, that's a good analogy, Tiki.
Like, yeah, it's there. We're gonna eat some turkey. We're gonna have a good time, but we're really looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah. Oh God, yes, and it's yeah. I mean, again, like before Avengers came out, like me being and my ties to the DC universe, I'm thinking like, okay, Avengers, I'm sure is going to be.
Though, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Basically, the era before Avengers, I'm thinking, okay, we got Avengers movie. I'm liking these new Marvel movies that are coming out. Avengers, I'm sure, is going to be great. But I mean, nothing's going to compare when we eventually get that Justice League movie. Like, oh, God,
I will say, if this came out before Avengers, it would blow people's minds.
It would.
I mean, I really think that's the bar we're at now. Like I said, this is a solid, well-made piece of popcorn entertainment. And honestly, I think the fact that it is a solid and well-made piece of popcorn entertainment is a small miracle unto itself, given the circumstances. I really do.
Because
I can't stress that enough.
Because this is non-spoiler, and just for the folks out there who may be watching this before they see the movie, we will urge everyone, believe it or not, as hard as it may be to believe, there is a mid and post credit sequence to this film. So, folks, stay till the end. There are two, and they're cool.
Yeah, I think the first one's a little cooler than the second one, but they're both pretty solid.
You're right, but I'm just saying, they're kind of like cool reveals. So well, the second one's a cool reveal. The first one's just really cool.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Oh, I can tell you, that first one's so uplifting and nice. So nice. Anyway.
Oh yeah. And Dragon, I want to say anything about the character involved, but let's just say, God, should we mention anything about him, Dragon?
I think people know that he's going to be in the movie. Just don't say anything about like when or how.
All right. I will say this is like far and away the best that Henry Cavill's been as Superman in this movie, and I like him along with Flash. Like him and Flash were kind of like the two big saving graces in this movie. Like I don't know, Dragon. I'm kind of on the Henry Cavill bandwagon now after this movie.
Again, I've told you, Tiki, he's been dying to play the Superman, so he's always had it in him. And again,
this is the Superman that I've always fucking wanted to see. I don't want to give too much away into exactly what they do with him, but
I don't want to spoil, but I'm not going to, and you know exactly what I want to spoil.
Yep.
You know what I want to spoil, darn it.
Oh, God. All right. Anyway. So weak points, I think we can agree. Aquaman, like, he has one or two funny moments. There's a moment with him and Wonder Woman that I liked, but...
Oh, yeah, that's a good moment.
But overall, Aquaman, it really kind of a disappointment, given I really did like the direction they were trying to go with him and the marketing and everything. Cyborg, like, Cyborg's kind of hit or miss for me in the movie, and I feel like we'll talk a lot about Cyborg in the spoiler cast.
I guess one thing, just again, I don't want to get too much into the characters, but one thing I will say, kind of tied to my expectations, with basically a scene from the trailer I was really looking forward to seeing in the movie was the scene where Wonder Woman is kind of in the museum. We basically see kind of Wonder Woman dispatching with some baddies in the museum, and I will say that scene it did not disappoint.
Nope, and also the Wonder Woman theme is just so good.
And by Danny Elfman.
Uh-huh.
yeah. So there's that said. I mean, yeah, again, there's definitely some cool moments we'll be able to talk about more when we.
I mean, I am really looking forward to breaking down this movie in a spoiler context because, as I said, I don't think it's a great movie by any stretch, but I think the fact that I enjoyed myself in this movie, like basically from Act 2 to the end, I will admit the first act is a little bumpy, but essentially once the team actually got together, I enjoyed myself. Like I was on board, and that in itself, it's like, I really do think that's kind of movie magic given the dire circumstances and production hell that this thing ended up in.
Yeah, I mean, Tiki, it kind of makes you wonder. Of course, I guess the big looming question is, what if Whedon had been more involved earlier? How much better could it have turned out?
Well, I think there's two what ifs. There's what if Whedon was involved earlier, or what if Snyder stayed on board. It's like there's two kind of like alternate timelines, and two, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Tiki. It's so funny. It's just like so kind of like snaky in its tail and the kind of the tales of superheroes. Because Tiki, my two favorite stories in all of film, my two favorite making of stories. Period. Just the making of Toy Story and the making of the Richard Donner Superman movie. Those are my two favorite stories in all of cinema, the making of those films. And of course, famously, and just as the Richard Donner story went on, just the whole direct change in director element of that story. And of course, that it's kind of funny how we keep with not only this, with the Han Solo movie and all sorts of the kind of movies.
Well, I think the Lucasfilm thing is a whole different. I just don't think they have their shit together at Lucasfilm, frankly.
Well, my point is, and that ties into the Donner story too. I mean, that's just kind of these decisions made and changing directors and reshooting things. And of course, like who's going to be on the end credit line, kind of waiting with anticipation, like again, who's going to get the final credits. Again, it's kind of like snaking its tail in terms of kind of Hollywood and the superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting back to that level with it in Hollywood. It's like, oh boy, just when you think you understand the game, it's gonna beat itself.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much ran the gambit on this, Dragon. Any final thoughts?
Again, folks, I'm coming down at the end. Just it's not the Justice League movie I was hoping for. It's a Justice League movie, but it's a good Justice League movie. It's not great, but it's good.
Honestly, I really do feel like this is just a perfect example of like measuring expectations, because I feel like you went in like, I know your expectations were reserved as well, but my expectations were basically this was going to be a complete shit show. So I walked out quite satisfied. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks so much for watching, and we will be back very soon, probably sometime over the weekend, I'm guessing, for the spoiler cast. A lot to get into with that. And yeah, in the meantime, talk to you later.
Unite the 6, not the 7.
You see, I don't really fight. I just push people and then run away.